Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 20th of July, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the screen. We see here a mixture of red and green, so it's a mixed market. We're seeing the dollar actually still looking relatively weak against a basket of currencies, just touching support here, downside potential of about 0.5%, so just that weaker dollar, still not weaker than the March low obviously, and the long-term trend still just holding, but we are just entering territory soon where that dollar is looking weaker, and that means that the euro is actually looking pretty strong against the dollar, not yet breaking the high we saw in March, but we are just steadily getting increasing there. A little change on the Japanese yen. Sterling against the dollar is actually stronger. That weaker dollar showing through there. And against the euro, we're back below the 110 level. So we are just seeing sterling steadily deteriorating against the euro there. So quite key. Looking at Bitcoin, really no big changes here, sitting at 9,185 in a very narrow, tight range. Having seen really big moves in Bitcoin over the last couple of years, we really are in the doldrums waiting for a break. The S&P 500 index closed up on Friday. That meant we did end up as a slightly higher up week. And if we look at the daily chart, we are still just nudging that June 8 high. So we haven't managed to break that yet, but still just holding on to the bull trend on all three time frames. The Nasdaq, of course, has broken to new all-time highs, although we did have a bearish week last week. That bearish engulfing candle last Monday still slightly hanging over us from a chart perspective, and it just looks the week we see that big red candle. So just the concern there on the Nasdaq is to hit the nadir at the end of last week, and can we go higher? That will be the thing to watch. The Dow sitting up just very slightly on Friday, a little again struggling to break the June 8 high. Looking at the futures this morning, we see the S&P future down 0.5% and the Nasdaq E-mini down by 0.5% as well. So it does look like US markets will open lower, and the VIX volatility is up 4% this morning. So we are just seeing a little bit of a jump. Having watched that slowly edge lower last week, we've come back to this level. We are still at twice the volatility levels that we saw at the start of the year. So there is still that market uncertainty. FTSE futures down just under 1% this morning. The DAX future down 0.4% and the DAX cash down 0.3%. So we are still seeing European markets really just holding on. It's all about this June 8 high, really. Can we break that? And if we look at the CAC 40, we're down 0.5% there. So markets just in the doldrums a little bit. We see the Japanese market was up slightly overnight and the Hang Seng down slightly. So not much big change there. Chinese stocks jumped a further 3%. They had a real pullback week last week, and we saw that very much on Thursday where we had that big downside candle and a little doji. So for the moment, we are just recovering somewhat and finding some support there on the cloud on the 60-minute chart. So Chinese stocks looking pretty good, and this column here is going to give us a new big upside target. So that's some 70% higher. We've still got these downside targets, but they're progressively coming off. This one's been taken off the chart as we broke to new highs. So for the moment, the Chinese situation looking much better than it was. The Sensex was up 0.6% in India, still not into long-term bullish territory here, but the short term making new highs above that June 8th level. So this market is actually managing to buck the trend. The Aussie market was down 0.5%, and again it's still struggling to break that high that we saw in June. Gold holding on to the $1,800 level, 1809, back into bullish territory. New upside targets here, 1836, 1820, 1836, 1843 not yet activated, and of course very long-term upside targets. Silver sitting at 1936. Had a good week last week, a closing high for the week. Still haven't closed higher than the level that we saw in 2019, but we are looking more and more likely to break that. So silver looking pretty strong on all three time frames as well. US 10-year yields just a touch lower at 0.62%. And we saw on the tech stocks on Friday, mostly the big majors holding up. Amazon still looking very strong indeed, although they did have a bearish week in the end. And that's a bearish engulfing candle there for Amazon, so we just need to be aware of that. Apple also had a relatively good week. Their trend very much still intact. Amazon's candle is probably more worrying. And Microsoft also a bearish candle for the week, so a little bit concerning there. We need to keep an eye on that. Taking a look at the energy mix now, Brent crude is down to 1% this morning. Breaking below the cloud here, we are seeing this trend being broken, and so that is quite key, breaking to new lows there. We do have downside targets, 41.95, 41.15. Does look like we'll come back. We do see here the range is about 43.80 and 41.30, so there's about $2.50 range there at the moment, but for the short term looking lower. And WTI not quite through the cloud yet, the same way as Brent, and the downside target's not quite yet activated. US nat gas looking lower. We've got downside targets here as well to the low 160s and to the 160s, and here on the 60-minute chart 159, 154, 164. So it does lots of downside targets, does suggest we're going lower this week, so not looking good for gas. Of course we are below the cloud. Coal is giving up some of its gains this morning, but it's still looking very much like a continuing recovery picture. Good uptrend here and good upside targets on the short-term chart, but we're just down 30% this morning. And emissions lower at 27 euros 09, and we've got a new downside target there of 24. So it looks like we could potentially go lower. We've broken the trend here for the moment, but the long-term uptrend is still very much intact. MVP we see this morning. We have just still below the cloud there on gas. Gas prices just struggling to just continue that recovery. And if we look at TTF, very much the same picture, just breaking below the €5 level. So that's pretty bearish for TTF, and we've gone out to clients this morning with a bearish note for the week. And if we look at winter gas, we're sitting at 11.40. So again, just breaking lower here, some downside targets. Just the recovery for gas prices just struggling. And last of all, German power. It's a long-term uptrend still in train. We've broken higher here, but we are just seeing a setback this week, and we have got targets lower. So mostly gas prices are looking just your energy prices in Europe this week just looking a little bit lower. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.